I'm Herbert van der Sompel. I am an Innovation Officer at the DAMS, which is a data archive in the Netherlands. And I'm going to present you the FAIR Signposting Profile, which is basically an interoperability specification that aims at making it easier for machines to navigate the scholarly web. The signposting idea and website have been around for quite a while, actually, since 2014. And Patrick has even made a very nice cartoon for the project all those years ago, which shows specifically what it is all about. It really puts out road signs to help machines accomplish tasks on the web, on the scholarly web specifically. So a way to think about that is that signposting basically does for machines what landing pages do for humans. So in a very similar way, that landing pages point people to resource here, resource there, etc. Signposting does that for machines. The way it does that was designed for utter simplicity, and is the result of having worked for 2 decades on all kinds of interoperability specifications and realizing that it's very hard to get people to implement anything when it comes to interoperability. So the techniques that we use are fully based on IETF specifications. They're aligned with REST and HTTP hypertext as the engine of application state. So it uses typed web links in the HTTP link header. So the headers that come back in HTTP communication, there's one header in there that's called the link header. And in there, you can basically provide typed links. And then the types, the relation types used in these links, they're all registered in IANA registry and defined in formal specifications. So in the website that we set up 6 years ago, there are 5 patterns that are presented. One is about showing to a machine where the persistent identifier of a thing is by means of a typed link. Another is to tell a machine where all the content resources that pertain to a scholarly object are on the web. Another is about the typed link to show where bibliographic metadata is available. Yet another one to say where the author identifiers are. And then another to convey the type of a resource. You know, is it a scholarly article? Is it the data set, etc., etc. And of course, since we're talking web links and typed web links, the targets of each of these links are, of course, URIs, HTTP URIs. So as an example, here you see the URI of an article, the landing page of an article that I've written. You do a curl on that, and the response here contains a link header and basically says, do not cite this by means of its landing page, but cite it by means of this DOI expressed as an HTTP URI. I actually spent a couple of years writing an RFC that specifies this cite as link as a result of research I did while I was still working in the US that showed that more papers were referenced by means of their landing page URLs than by means of their persistent identifiers. Another pattern that I explained is to tell a machine where the content files are for certain scholarly objects. And so here you see the landing page URI of another article, and we do an HTTP head on that. And then in the link header, you now see several item links, and each of these item links point at a different piece of content. In this case, it's the same content expressed in different MIME types, but it could also be different content. Again, these item links are defined in an RFC. So signposting is all about making the scholarly web and scholarly resources more easy to navigate for machines. And FAIR, which you cannot avoid nowadays, is exactly about the same. So I thought, why don't we present the signposting idea under the FAIR umbrella, and then maybe we'll get some more adoption. And it was especially true because the organization that I work at plays an important role in the whole FAIR advocacy. We run the FAIR project, and part of that is actually also the creation of an automatic tool, Fuji, to assess the fairness of scholarly resources on the web. So a couple of months ago, I started creating an implementation guideline, really. So the signposting patterns remain the same, but I created an implementation guideline that tells people basically which links to implement for landing pages and for content resources. And here in this little image here, you basically see how a scholarly resource is typically represented on the web. You see a landing page, there's a persistent identifier, you go there and you get redirected. There's several content resources, authors with persistent identifiers, and metadata records. And so the profile, the document, distinguishes two levels. One provides the typed links by value, that is in the HTTP link header, as I've just shown you. That's a minimal set of links. Mandatory links pertaining to the landing page, and those are the ones that you see here. For example, it is mandatory to say that a certain landing page has a corresponding persistent identifier, or it is mandatory to at least point at one metadata description, and it's mandatory to give a type of this page, namely, it's a landing page. And then recommended is also to provide information using link headers about each of the content resources. For example, it's part of this collection, which is the landing page, and it has a certain resource type. For example, it's a scholarly article or it's a data set. So that's level one. That's a minimal amount of information, but would already help machines to navigate this scholarly resource. Level two, we're going to leverage a new specification that I was involved in creating, and there all the typed links pertaining to landing page and content resources are provided in the standalone document. And that standalone document is called a link set. So rather than providing these links in the HTTP header, you provide all of them in a single document. And those are links pertaining to the landing page, but also all the links pertaining to the content resource. And now it's a comprehensive set, not just a minimal part. And of course, there needs to be a way now to discover this link set from the landing page and from these content resources. And this is what you see here. So basically, here is the landing page to the left and content resource to the right. They use this mechanism with HTTP link, now with the link set relation type, to point at that link set. And that link set then contains links pertaining to the landing page, which you see here, and pertaining to the content resources, all in one standalone document, which has a defined JSON representation. So the links for the landing page that are mandatory at this level 2, so in the link set, are shown here. So now we want links for all the content resources. We also want links for all the authors that have a persistent identifier. And then for the content resources, you see the same links that are mandatory, type and collection, that I've shown before, but there are additional links possible. And in this case, the use of these links for content resources, so think about the PDF document or a CSV file or an audio file under a scholarly object, these will only be used if the information pertaining to these content resources is different that is provided about the landing page. So for example, if a data file would have another persistent identifier than the article itself, then you would create a link to that persistent identifier from that content file. Why do we do all of this? Well, clearly to make it easier for machines to navigate the web. And just this week, we came up with a scenario that we're going to experiment at my current employer, Dans, which is all about archiving in a way that uses the signposting capability. So to go quickly in this step diagram, you see a user here on the landing page in a repository, and we want to provide the user with the option of selecting a certain data set and asking a repository, an archive, to preserve that thing for the long term. So this whole interaction starts with a notification sent to the archive that contains the payload, basically the landing page as a payload. There's a bot that receives this notification, and now it's going to use signposting. The bot is going to visit the landing page, is going to find in the response from the landing page a link to the link set. Then the bot is going to collect the link set and is getting the link set back, which you see here at the right-hand side. This is, not really serialized, but a mnemonic representation of this link set that basically says there is descriptive metadata at this URL, there are 3 content resources at these 3 URLs, and the persistent identifier is this. And with this information from this link set, our bot can now go visit one by one each of these resources, bring them back, wrap them up, and put them in an archive. So that's basically what is being described in the FAIR Signposting Profile. This is not written in stone yet. It's all still open for feedback. There's a GitHub repository where you can have your say. So please have a look at it and provide us with feedback. Thank you much.
Thank you, Herbert. When I saw the slide about the robot archiving and webpage, I thought about the W3C projects with Ruben Fairberg, who tries to make it easier to decentralize the web. Would it be a possibility to ask this software to for others archive me and move all the data to another place?
Absolutely, right. And this is, as a matter of fact, a thing, again, when I was still working in the US, a scenario that we've explored in the context of distributed publishing by scholars in these pods, in these Solis pods. In the end, that is good for dissemination of information. But when you look at it from the perspective of the scholarly record, that material still needs to be archived for the long term, right? And so a scenario like what I depict here could be absolutely something one could realize by means of very simple interoperability specifications.
Thank you. We have also a question from Jacob Vos. Can some third party create and publish link sets for journals that are likely to become extinct?
I did not understand that question, I think.
Can some third party create and publish link sets for journals that are likely to become extinct? I don't think it.
Yeah. So if you look at the link set specification, it is actually one of the scenarios it talks about is that it's not only, let's say, the custodian of the information that can publish link sets about the information, but third parties could also do that, right? So for example, you could think of Crossref or DataCite publishing link sets that express information about DOI identified resources and basically provide all of this information as third parties to the game. That is definitely a possibility, and we call it third party links in the internet draft that specifies link sets.
Right, thank you. We have also a question of Companion. What is the best reason for using signposting plus link set over existing relations formats like LRDD, link sets, or linked data?
Okay, so this gets us into a bit of a philosophical realm more, where my typical answer will be that this approach, first of all, is utterly basic. and is very implementable. We've seen people implement this in literally an hour's time for a repository, right? The other aspect of this is the distinction between navigational information and descriptive information. Now, this stuff clearly fits into the navigational one. The semantic web stuff typically fits in the descriptive stuff, whereas indeed linked data sits a bit in between, combines a bit of the navigational aspect and the descriptive aspect. And this is also why in the specification of linked sets, we've taken care of not only define the JSON serialization, but also allow for the definition of a context that allows to represent the JSON information as JSON LD and to consume it as JSON LD. So when you publish a link set in JSON, it is possible to interpret it as linked data also. So we basically play both worlds at the same time there.
Thank you. I think there's still time for one more question from. Could there be another way to point to the linked set than by an HTTP link? For instance, in the metadata of an object in a catalog?
Well, there's really two ways. One is in the HTTP link header, and the other would be in the landing page itself by using a link element in HTTP head. Those are the two ways that you can convey a typed link in HTTP communications. So the HTTP link header, of course, works for resources of all media types, right? You can always use an HTTP header. The link in HTML, of course, only works for resources that are HTML.
Thank you. I think this were all the questions.